no rush to grab because we're going to cover a lot of this stuff. So you can get it anytime, or you can get it on the way out.
Thank you.
We're going to cover a lot of the information I speak about in there about the process of applying and state programs and things like that.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
my name
you.
is Michael St. John Turner. I work for an agency called New York State Higher Education Services Corporation, HESC. Some of you might know who we are if you've been through this process before. We're the New York State Tuition Assistance Program, TAP. So we run the TAP grants, we run the state scholarship programs, we have oversight on the New York State 529 College Savings Program. We have pretty much our hands on a lot of different areas of the financial aid process as it involves New York. We also have a partnership with the federal government for the FAFSA process, and also are aware of the entire financial aid process as it relates to colleges. I have experience in financial aid now, it's about over 14 years. And so I've worked for colleges, now I work for the state, and I'm going to be your expert for the evening. So please feel free to ask questions as they come up as we talk about financial aid and get you ready for this whole important process. So when we talk about financial aid, we talk about the programs that help families pay for college. One, I've done these for many years, these presentations, and one thing I think that families need to understand about the aid process is that it's sort of divided into two camps. On the one side of financial aid programs, we have what we call need-based aid programs, Now when you hear something is needs-based, it means that they're going to be looking at family income as the primary indicator of whether or not the student qualifies. So if you're writing notes, the note would be need-based equals income, family income, right? That's one part of the aid process, but it's not the entire package. But when I talk to families, and I already mentioned I'm from New York City, I work with families of all different income ranges, from low, middle, high income, and everybody seems to be worried about their income, whether it's too low, too high, or to qualify, and all this stuff, and they're really racking their brain about whether or not they're going to get aid based on need. And then I try to turn the focus to, well, need-based is part of it, and we're going to talk tonight about that process. There's a lot of misunderstanding about how the need-based aid process works, because many families, even families with high incomes, have some need for aid at colleges, depending on the price of the college, but we'll get to that. But a bigger point to make is that there are plenty of families that get free money for their kids, irregardless of their income situation. Now, those programs represents the other side of aid, the other camp, which is what we call the merit-based financial aid programs. Merit-based means a grant or scholarship or program that's being offered to the student for any other reason that has nothing to do with income. What could those reasons be? Well, obvious reasons have to do with academic ability. Students that come out of their high school with a strong profile of grades and test scores, Regents, SAT, ACT, you name it, a good academic profile could mean that college is going to be relatively inexpensive for that family. Now, not every student is coming out of this high school as a straight A student, so then you say, okay, what else could we get merit-based money for? Well, another obvious one would be athletic ability. No matter the income profile of the family, the student's talented in athletics, they're going to be able to get financial aid scholarships that help them at certain schools. Then there are other odd reasons why families can get financial aid. You can get merit-based awards based on the essays that a student writes, the community service that the student has done. They have community service-based awards. Legacy awards. If you send your kid to the same college that you graduated from, that might boost the financial aid a little bit because they're considered a student to be a legacy student. I used to work at a Catholic college, and we used to give more money to students that came from Catholic schools versus public schools because they have relationships with certain schools. So there are a number of factors. And the job for families is to figure out, well, if our income is going to be a problem, whether you think it's high, low, or whatever, how can we get financial aid for the other ways, the other reasons that colleges offer aid that are not need-based, that are purely merit-based? And navigating this system is going to be important. We're going to talk a little bit about how colleges look at this. Now, the merit-based aid system has grown so much over the years that we see it that it's statistically true that families that make over $250,000 a year get more free money for their kids than any other income demographic. So I always like to dispel the first myth in financial aid, which is If you're poor, you don't have to worry the government pays your college. If you're middle class, you're screwed. And if you're high income, you don't have to worry you can write the check. So I've heard that rumor for so many years, and it's false. The way it goes is if you're poor, you're screwed because you won't get enough government grants. Don't really pay the growing costs of college the way they used to. Middle class families, yes, you guys are screwed. And high income families, no worries, you don't even have to write the check because you're going to be getting a lot of free money for your kids. So how do we navigate this system? Now, why are higher income families getting a lot of money for their kids? Because they're not so concerned about their income. They've already known that that ship has sailed. They're not going to, overnight become poor and qualify for a lot of government-based grants. So what do? They focus their efforts on applying to colleges and working with the student, working with the financial aid offices to pair the students to colleges that are going to award them based on merit, not so much need. So if you feel like you're a family in this position where your income profile is going to be strong, how can we match the student to colleges that are going to work with you based on merit as opposed to need? When we talk about the individual colleges that are out, the individual financial aid programs offered by the colleges, you see grants and scholarships, and that's the free stuff. Every family wants a lot of grant and scholarship aid for their students. There's scholarships and grants that come from the government, from the colleges, from private programs. We'll talk about those differences. What's important to know is if you get one of these things, if you get a scholarship, if you get a grant, what are the strings attached? What are the rules and conditions? Is it renewable for 4 years? Or is it a one-shot deal? If it's a merit-based program, is there a minimum GPA, a minimum passing average that they're looking for from the student in order to retain? If it's a grant and it's based on need, do you have to renew the applications for aid every year? Typically, the FAFSA and the other applications we're going to be talking about do need to be renewed every year. So if this is your first time in this process of working on financial aid, it won't be your last because you'll be doing the FAFSA and the New York State TAP application for every year that your child is in college and you're seeking assistance. On the other side, we have what we call self-help programs. Programs that are not necessarily free. Self-help programs include things like work-study programs, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, and student loans, which we'll speak a lot about later. Basically, financial aid programs, they fall under the umbrella of financial aid, but they're not free the way a grant or scholarship would be, where grants and scholarships don't have to be paid back, loans do, and work-study you have to work to earn the aid. And we'll get a little more into those nuances a little bit later when we see the programs available. In regards to the sources, what sources are out there? And just a quick note, the PowerPoints, I always usually make it available. I think this is my 5th year here at Brewster, and every year I always make it available to the school. So if you worry you might miss a site, just note, don't worry about it. This will be available. I think it's Dr. Murray in guidance, and he works on getting it out to everybody. And then we're also recording it. So the resources. Federal and state. When you fill out for financial aid, we're going to talk about January when the FAFSA process begins. It's going to be kind of like the way you do taxes. As soon as you file your federal tax, what does the accountant say? Now we go on to do the state. So it's the same thing when you fill out for financial aid. The initial applications you'll be working on are the federal and the state, and you do both at the same time. So as soon as you start and complete a FAFSA, you'll be immediately brought over to do your New York State aid. Now, one thing to know is that New York State aid is only made available to a New York family where the student is going to be pursuing their higher education at a New York State-based college. Now, you notice I said based college, not New York State College, because when I say state college, people think SUNY or CUNY down in the city. It's not just SUNY or CUNY, it's any college that's based in New York that's eligible. So you can get state aid at schools like Columbia, NYU, Fordham. It doesn't matter if they're public or private as long as they're based in New York. But if the student goes out of state, you lose the aid resources that are available to the student because New York doesn't send state money out of state. So it's important for students to have options in New York. And we'll get a little bit more into that later when I show you the types of programs that we offer here in New York. Thirdly, you have the college. The college, I think, is key. Especially those families here who are thinking about higher cost colleges, maybe those that are in the private sector, the private colleges and universities, the more popular colleges here in New York, like NYU, for example. Those colleges, they hold the key because even like I said in the beginning, if you're low income and qualify for a number of the federal and state programs, those grants even at their maximum, are only a drop in the bucket when we talk about the high cost of some of these colleges. So it's important to know, if you're applying to certain colleges, what they make available to families. And we call that institutional aid. And as I said at the outset, that could be based on need, or that could be based on merit, or both. We want to learn how to work the colleges, and I'm going to talk about that throughout the presentation this evening. Then lastly, you have outside money. Outside money means money that comes from the private sector or not-for-profit world, charities, wealthy individuals who basically make scholarships available to families. Now this is what I often call an X factor, because scholarship money, if a family accesses it, could be the difference between having a more affordable college cost or it being a little bit more expensive if the college and the state and federal government resources don't provide enough. So you definitely want to spend time looking for outside resources and at least make an effort to apply to these scholarships that are out there. Now, as I said in the beginning, there could be scholarships based on financial needs, so some of them will require families to disclose income, but there are a ton out there based on merit. One I always like to cite as an outside source that any family can apply to, regardless of income, is one called the Doodle for Google Scholarship. All your kid has to do is draw the Google sign, submit it to Google for their annual contest, and Google will give your family up to $25,000 for their college. No questions asked about your income. And that's actually a K-12 scholarship initiative. So we're also going to talk about how it's never too early to learn about financial aid, because they offer these scholarships in cohorts for students starting from K-12. So last year in New York, a 7th grader in Levittown, Long Island won $25,000 from this program, Doodle for Google. So that's one example, and I'll give you some resources a little bit later telling you how you can find more of these neat things out there that you can apply to. Applying for aid, it depends on how many steps we need to go through, what resources we're applying to. Typically, there are 4 areas that you need to cover regarding applications. The first is this thing called FAFSA. We're going to spend a lot of time this evening talking about FAFSA. Why? Because it's the most commonly filed application, and any family looking for aid, the college is going to tell you have to go through that process. If you live in New York, which you all do, this is New York State High School, you're going to want to spend time doing the New York State TAP application. So we'll speak a little bit about the TAP application process and also about the scholarship applications that New York State makes available to its families. So first we have FAFSA, then we have the state. Thirdly, you have the college. Now the college, you may or may not need to fill out additional forms for that. Some private colleges require a private application called the CSS profile. That's an optional form because some of you may not be applying to colleges that need it, but some of you it might not be optional because you're applying to 1 or 2 colleges that do require it. So let's say, for example, you're applying to colleges here in New York, such as Syracuse, Fordham, NYU, Columbia, Cornell, Vassar. Those are all colleges that require the CSS profile. But if you're applying just to SUNYs, Purchase, Albany, Binghamton, then you don't have to do this because SUNYs do not require the CSS profile. So it all depends. What colleges are we applying to? Do they need it or not? And we're going to look at colleges' websites to figure out whether this is a requirement. Lastly, you have the private money. Remember the scholarships, the Doodle for Google. Completely up to you. There's so many programs out there. There are thousands of scholarships out there that this thing can be completely overwhelming. However, while you may see it as an option, I see it as a necessity, because if you're looking to get the best deal for college and spend as little of your hard-earned money, then of course you want to be aggressive about applying to as many programs that are out there that offer you free assistance. And these scholarships are often what I believe an underutilized area of aid, because oftentimes families are tapped out. They're pretty much tired of the process, and the student will maybe apply to 1, if not 0, scholarship applications. So we definitely want to get on that. And like I said, I'll give you some resources a little bit later. Let's start with the FAFSA. Why the FAFSA? Because it's the big mystery of aid that a lot of families want to know. What is it about? What is it doing? How is it going to help us? Or how is it going to screw us over? What is this FAFSA going to do? FAFSA, the first thing is, what does it stand for? The Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The first F is free. Now, why is that important to emphasize? Why should you care what the acronym FAFSA stands for? Well, because they're scam impersonating websites. The real website you get FAFSA is one called FAFSA.gov. This is a federal government program. So when you go to FAFSA.gov, you get a user experience that's provided by the federal government, and there's no charges at the end once you submit your application. It's the free application. However, if you Google or use Bing or whatever you use to search for things on the web, you might find the first couple of links that they show you are for websites like FAFSA.com, FAFSAapplication.net. These are scam impersonator sites that will charge you something like $80 at the end to fill out your free application. Now, why is this important to know? Because every year we get hundreds of complaints from people in New York State, New York families, who stumbled across the FAFSA.com, spent their $80, and then heard from their neighbor that they did their own website and they did theirs for free. And we've tried to shut them down, but they have really good lawyers. And what do? They put these big user agreements. You know when you update your iPhone, it says read the 600-page user agreement. And you're just like, I agree, shut up, I want my iTunes. Well, people do that on the FAFSA.com, and in the FAFSA.com disclaimers, they actually show you the real FAFSA free website, and they say, look, you're about to pay, but here's the free website. So a lot of people skip it, and they put it like on the 100th page, so you don't really read that far if you even do read the first couple pages. So just be careful, that's the point. Now, what does FAFSA do? FAFSA is going to be an important application because not only is it collected by the federal government, a copy gets sent to our agency in New York State, your schools, your colleges that you're applying to will get a copy, and they're going to use it to initiate the need-based aid process. Now remember, FAFSA has only to do with your need-based eligibility. So when I'm talking about all this stuff about FAFSA, some families get discouraged. They're like, oh, well, I guess we're not getting anything. Remember, we're talking strictly about the need. So for some families, FAFSA provides assistance because it qualifies. For others, FAFSA may not. But FAFSA is going to be important to do because many colleges still require families to complete the FAFSA to exhaust that option. They want to know that you've exhausted that option. Also, the FAFSA is going to be required for any families that are looking to borrow loans. So maybe some of you have resigned to the fact that you're going to be borrowing for college or are aware that you're going to be borrowing for college. You would have to do a FAFSA in order to access the federal government loans. So if you're looking for the PLUS loan for parents, the Stafford loan subsidized with no interest for students, you have to do the FAFSA even to access those programs. FAFSA is released on January 1st of the student's senior year, so this new year 2015. That's the application period. That's when we give families the green light to start applying. Be careful because you can go to FAFSA.gov tonight. You can see the website, so this is where you know where you're going. You can actually start filling out a application, but that's not the application that you need to be doing. Because in January, they're going to refresh the website and provide an updated FAFSA application for students that are seniors who are looking to enter into the 2015-2016 college year. So that's going to be the students that are in the 12th grade. If you're a parent of an 11th grader or a 10th grader, then you don't have to worry about this until when your student is in the 12th grade and it's the new year of their 12th grade. Just be careful. Sometimes students submit the FAFSA too early and it doesn't get sent to the colleges. You want to do it after January 1st. When's the deadline? So we release it on January 1st. When do you have to have it finished by? The rule of thumb is it's usually as early as possible. Why? Because the old saying, the early bird gets the worm, right? There literally are programs that are offered on a first-come, first-served basis at the colleges. So the earlier that you apply, the better you have a chance of accessing some of these programs at the college. Especially those of you who are looking for need-based grant aid from colleges, those funds can tend to run out. So you always want to make sure you apply early. The latest that you should be applying is at least by your college's set financial aid deadline. So there isn't one magical due date. On the FAFSA, they'll tell you that the latest that you can apply would be June 30th of next year, of 2016. Your kid's going to be done with their freshman year by then. That's the technical deadline. That's the last day that college can change the FAFSA. You want to be applying, could be February 1st that you have to be done by, February 15th, March 15th. It all depends on your colleges. So what you need to do is make a list of all the colleges that you apply to, and not only look at the admissions deadline, but what is the preferred financial aid deadline. They'll say this is the date we want you to have the FAFSA, the CSS profile in, and it'll be different for different colleges. We'll talk about how you're going to be doing one FAFSA, and it'll cover different colleges. So you're not going to have to go back on the 1st and then the 15th. You'll be submitting it early, by the earliest due date, and all your colleges will be covered after that. This is commonly what families need in regards to their income and personal information when we're looking at filing a FAFSA, or even for any other financial aid application such as the CSS profile. Now this is common, not what you will need, because every family is going to be different. Let's say, for example, you're currently unemployed and maybe your unemployment benefits expired and you're not going to file taxes because you're not receiving anything that requires you to file taxes. Maybe you're disabled and you just received Social Security disability income that says DI and you're not required to file taxes for that. Then you would just simply tell FAFSA that you're not working, you don't file taxes, and FAFSA is very easy for the low-income, non-working family. It'll just simply have you submit it, sign it, and send it off to the colleges. Now, because you submit a FAFSA that says your family's not working and they're not filing taxes, it'll go to the colleges for what we call verification. The colleges will then send a letter, say, hey, we got your FAFSA. It's pretty much blank. It says you're not working, you don't do taxes. So what income do you receive? So in that case, this is when families would have to show any sort of special income programs that they're receiving. Things like public assistance, food stamps, Social Security benefits. The FAFSA is not going to collect that info from certain families. So I get a lot of questions from families, well, I'm currently disabled, I'm receiving Social Security, how does that figure on the FAFSA? The answer is it doesn't. It's not going to be questioned about, it's not going to be asked, but your college, in the process of doing the financial aid packaging, will question about what resources you have, and you'll have to send those 1099 SSAs or all the other documentation of what special income you have. That will go to the college. What FAFSA is really concerned with is your basic income that families file for families that earn money and file taxes. Then we're going to have more information to put on the FAFSA. So as soon as you tell FAFSA, yes, I'm employed, yes, I had income I earned, yes, I'm doing taxes, it's going to open up all the additional questions. Now the taxes in question, they want to know about the money you're making this year, from January 1st to December 31st of 2014. And the way that they do that is they ask it off of your 2014 income taxes. This is going to be your future tax return. The one that you did this past April was the 2013. Now, I know many families get aggravated because they feel I'm saying, hey, apply early, and you want to apply the first week of January, so how the heck can you fill out a FAFSA when you don't even have your W-2s from 2014 yet? What we say is FAFSA is going to actually give you explicit permission to use estimates to get your application in early. Those estimates can be based on whatever financial information you have that best represents your income from 2014. What could that be? That could be your last 2013 taxes. Let's say you're like me, you work at a job for a few years, they pay you the same thing pretty much every year, maybe you get a cost of living raise and it's just slightly different. You could use last year's taxes. You can even add or subtract from that income if you feel like it's going to be a little more or a little less, just using estimates. Or if let's say your income dramatically changed. You don't want to use 2013 because that was a different job, a different time, a different income. You can pull out your last pay stub from this year. Let's say your last December pay stub. It'll say year-to-date earned, show you how much taxes they've taken out of your check. And you can use those items off of your last pay stub to pull together the financial information that the FAFSA needs. Whatever you need to do. If you tell me my college deadline is February 1st, and on January 30th, I don't have my W-2s, I don't have any financial info, just go online to the FAFSA and guess your numbers. Say, we make $90,000, mom makes $45,000, dad makes $45,000, we pay about this much in taxes, sign it, submit it, you're done. If you have to guess your numbers, it could be whatever ballpark figures you want. You want to get it in on time to the best of your ability. Now, I know that there's many other hurdles that families have. Many families will say, well, we're self-employed, or we have commission, or our income goes up, it's peaks and valleys, and maybe this year's a peak, or maybe this year's going to be a valley, as best as you can. Colleges will not award you to the maximum benefit if you are late. They'll use your lateness as an excuse to not give you money that you would otherwise be entitled to if you filed on time. So do your best to get it in. Other sources of income depends on whether you receive these things or not. Single parents, they're going to ask about child support. We're going to talk about as a standout situation about single parents and how to fill it out if you're single, so we'll get to that topic. Certain information on assets will be asked about on the FAFSA. Now, assets, a lot of families get worried. The first thing I like to do when I do these presentations is I recommend a lot of articles, things that you can read that help kind of calm you down or get you ready for the assets and income information collection process on the FAFSA. On Forbes, there's a columnist, his name is Troy Oldnink. I don't even know how to spell his last name. What I'll tell you is, do Forbes, financial aid on Google. You'll get this columnist. He actually just released something on the 28th of November. talking about the whole entire, here's a user guide to filing for financial aid. In there is a link to a piece that he wrote about getting your assets ready for college. So Wall Street Journal ran a similar article. You can Google Wall Street Journal assets for college, and they ran a similar article a little bit earlier. So there are many different resources. If you just simply do some Googling and Google assets and college, go to the news section, you'll see that there's currently a lot of articles going on out there, and there are columnists that write about this stuff all the time. I'll give you the highlights, and then you can do the rest of the information reading at home. So what are the highlights? Let's start with assets. The first thing is that when we look at assets, the amount of income you earn drives whether or not FAFSA collects information about your assets. That's the first thing that you need to know. Not every family who files a FAFSA has to reveal what's in their bank accounts or what's in their investments. Why is that? Because first they're going to look at your earned income. From your earned income, they're going to make a decision whether or not you can either afford to pay for college or not. Now, if they see your income is too low for their standard, they're going to say, okay, that's it, we're done. You make this much money, you can't pay for college, sign it, you're done. Other families are going to say, oh, wait, that income looks good. You might have to tell us more information about your other income and asset resources. So some of you will hit this lottery where they're going to say, do you want to skip the rest of the questions on the FAFSA? Whenever you are presented with the option to skip the rest of the questions, by all means say yes and complete it, because FAFSA is giving you a pass. Other families, you're not going to get a pass, you might get a test. You're going to say, it's going to say, are your family's assets more than $150,000 a year, worth more than $150,000 right now, current market value? Yes or no? If you say no, we don't have that much money saved up, we don't own that much in any investments, then you get skipped to the end of the FAFSA. It's kind of like Chutes and Ladders, right? Where are you going, where does it take you? Other families, you get no pass. It's going to say, boom, what's in your checking account, savings account, investments, property, business, you get all the questions that come in. So let's address that. For families that have to answer those questions, all depends, right? Now some families, before we even get to that, they'll say, well, how do we hit that magic lottery where FAFSA is going to let us skip the questions? There is no magic income line. They're going to look at a number of variables. It's an online form, so basically your answer to the first question determines whether or not you get asked the second question, or if it skips an entire section of the FAFSA, it's all going to be, developing for you as you answer questions.
Can I consider location?
Yes. So when you do first, before they get to your income, they're going to ask you to do a family profile. They're going to ask for parent information. They're going to ask for things like your age, state of residence, household size, number of dependent children in college, and I have it up there. Based on those earlier variables, your age, for example, the reason why they ask a parent their date of birth is not because the feds want to send you a birthday card, but because the closer you are to age 62, the lower they're going to expect of your ability to pay for college. You're going to get what's called a higher income and asset protection allowance. The form is going to protect a certain amount of families' income and assets based on their family profile. So if you have a big family, you might make a decent salary, but you might have a huge asset and income protection allowance because you have a lot of mouths to feed. If, for example, you have more than one child in college, you automatically divide the income between the children. So let's say you make $100,000, but you have 2 kids in college. It's like each kid, the parents only make $50,000 per kid, which might put you into a lower bracket, which might mean that you're actually a lower income family on the application than if you were applying with just one kid and made $100,000. Age of parents, like I said, the older you are, the higher they're going to protect your income and assets because they think you need to use it for retirement. So younger families, younger parents, have a little bit more of a penalty than older parents. So all of these different variables in the family profile will determine whether or not you get the bypass of your asset questions. So whether they disallow your assets or not. Yes, sir?
Does income include things like pensions, withdrawals from retirement accounts?
So remember, the FAFSA is going to ask you 2 questions. How much income you earned from work in 2014. So a retired person would say, I didn't earn any income. If you didn't work a year, maybe you're not. But then the second question is going to be, do you file taxes? Now when you say, yes, I file taxes, then you have to report the items off of your taxes. That's where they'll catch any distributions from pensions that you're receiving. They only look at the distributions. They're not going to look at the amount retained in the account. So that's the important thing to understand. When you have to list your investment values, they're looking at ordinary investments that are not in tax-deferred retirement accounts. So if you have life insurance policies, annuities, deferred compensation plans, 401ks, IRAs of any variety, Roth, or if you're a simple retirement savings plan, those are all off limits. So if you've been saving aggressively for your retirement, you won't have to reveal that. It's not going to penalize you for that on the FAFSA. But they will look at things like what's in your checking account. So say you have a Chase checking account, you got to log into your Chase app, and then you're going to say, this is what I have in my checking account. Your simple savings account. Now, other things come into here too, 529s. 529s are saved for college. Therefore, they have to be evaluated as one of your income sources that you can use to pay for college. Other investments, they look at ordinary investments, money markets, CDs.